The morning sun was bright over the busy streets of Gangnam in Seoul. Ji-hye Kim walked slowly along the sidewalk, carrying her old brown handbag close to her side. She was a woman in her late 40s with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Her clothes were simple and plain. She wore a faded blue shirt and black pants that had been washed many times. Her shoes were old sneakers with small holes near the toes. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail with no fancy clips or decorations. Ji-hye stopped in front of a tall glass building. The sign above the doors read, First National Bank Premium Branch. The building was shiny and modern. Through the glass doors, she could see marble floors and crystal lights hanging from the ceiling. Everything looked expensive and new. She took a deep breath and pushed open the heavy glass door. A blast of cold air from the air conditioner hit her face. The inside of the bank was even more impressive than the outside. The floors were so clean and shiny that Ji-hye could see her reflection in them. Large paintings hung on the white walls. Soft music played from hidden speakers. The bank was full of people, but these were not ordinary people. They were wealthy customers who came to this special branch. Women wore designer dresses and carried handbags that cost more than a car. Men wore expensive suits and gold watches that sparkled under the lights. Everyone looked important and rich. Ji-hye walked toward the waiting area. Her old sneakers made small squeaking sounds on the marble floor. Several people turned to look at her. Their eyes moved from her worn shoes to her faded clothes. Some women whispered to each other behind their hands. A man in a dark suit moved his briefcase away as she passed by, as if he thought she might take it. She found an empty seat and sat down quietly. Around her, other customers talked on their phones about business deals and expensive purchases. One woman bragged about her new sports car. A man discussed buying a second home in Paris. Ji-hye sat with her hands folded in her lap, waiting patiently for her turn. Behind the counter, the bank employees noticed her too. A young teller named Min Seo nudged her coworker and pointed at Ji-hye. "Look at that woman," she whispered. "Why is she here? This is a premium branch." Her coworker, a man named Dong-hyun, shook his head. Maybe she walked into the wrong bank. She should go to the regular branch on the other side of town. They both laughed quietly, but not quietly enough. Ji-hye heard them but pretended she did not. She had learned long ago not to let such things bother her. She knew that people often judged others by their appearance. It was a sad truth about the world. More time passed. Ji-hye watched as other customers who arrived after her were called first. The bank employees seemed to serve the well-dressed people faster. Finally, after waiting for nearly 30 minutes, she heard her number called. "Number 47, Min Seo said in a flat voice, not even looking up. Ji-hye stood up and walked to the counter. "Good morning," she said with a warm smile. "I would like to make a withdrawal, please." Min Seo finally looked at her. The teller's eyes traveled over Ji-hye's simple clothes with barely hidden disgust.
"Do you have an account with us?"
she asked, her tone suggesting she doubted it. "Yes, I do," Ji-hye replied politely. She reached into her old handbag and pulled out her identification card and bank book. Both were worn and old. Min Seo took the documents as if they might be dirty. She typed something into her computer and waited. Her eyebrows rose slightly as she looked at the screen. "How much do you want to withdraw?" she asked. "I need to take out 5 million won, please," Ji-hye said. This was about $4,000. She needed it to make a donation to an orphanage that took care of children who had no parents. Min Seo's face changed. A smirk appeared on her lips. "1 moment, please," she said. Instead of processing the withdrawal, she picked up her phone and made a call. "Manager Park, could you come to counter 3, please? There is a situation here." Ji-hye felt a small worry grow in her stomach, but she kept her calm expression. She had done nothing wrong. Her account was legal and proper. She had every right to withdraw her own money. Within a minute, a man in his 50s approached the counter. This was Jun-ho Park, the branch manager. He was tall and thin, wearing an expensive gray suit with a red tie. His hair was slicked back with gel, and he wore glasses with designer frames. Everything about him said he thought highly of himself. "What seems to be the problem?" he asked Min Seo, not even looking at Ji-hye yet. Min Seo leaned close and whispered something to him, though her whisper was loud enough for Ji-hye to hear. "This woman wants to withdraw 5 million won, but look at her account balance." Manager Park finally turned his attention to Ji-hye. His eyes scanned her from head to toe. His upper lip curled slightly as he took in her appearance. Then he looked at the computer screen. What he saw there made him laugh. It was not a kind laugh. It was the laugh of someone who found something ridiculous. "Madam," he said, his voice dripping with fake politeness, "are you sure you are at the right bank?" Jihai felt her face grow warm, but she kept her voice steady. "Yes, I have an account here. I would like to make a withdrawal." Manager Park laughed again, louder this time. Several customers nearby stopped their conversations to watch. "You want to withdraw 5 million won?" he asked. "From an account that has barely 6 million won in it." His voice had grown louder with each word. Now half the bank was watching them. Jihi felt dozens of eyes on her. Her hands trembled slightly, but she clasped them together to keep them still. "Yes," she said quietly, "I need the money for a donation. To help children in need." This made Manager Park laugh even harder. "A donation? My dear lady, perhaps you should be receiving donations, not giving them." He turned to the other customers as if inviting them to join in the joke. Some of them smiled. Others looked uncomfortable but said nothing. "This is a premium branch," Manager Park continued, his voice now cold. "We serve clients with significant assets. Clients who maintain large balances and conduct substantial business. Perhaps you would be more comfortable at our regular branch across town. They handle smaller accounts there." Jihai took a deep breath. "I have been a customer of this bank for 15 years, she said, her voice still calm despite the anger building inside her. "I have every right to conduct my business here." "Rights?" Manager Park scoffed. He crossed his arms over his chest. "Madam, you are wasting our time. We have important clients waiting. Clients with real money. Look at yourself. Your clothes are old. Your shoes have holes. And you want to withdraw almost all your money for some charity story? I think not." The words hit Jihai like physical blows. Around them, the bank had gone almost completely silent. Everyone was watching now. Some people looked away, embarrassed by what they were seeing but unwilling to speak up. Others seemed entertained by the drama. "I would still like to make my withdrawal," Jihai said, though her voice now shook slightly. "It is my money. I have the right." Manager Park's face grew red. He was not used to people challenging him, especially not someone who looked like Jihai. "I am the manager of this branch," he said, his voice rising. "And I am telling you that we will not process this transaction. Not today, not here. Now I suggest you leave before I call security." He grabbed Jihi's bank book and identification card from the counter and thrust them toward her. "Go find a bank that serves people like you," he said with cruel satisfaction in his voice. Jihi's eyes filled with tears, but she refused to let them fall. "Not here, not in front of these people." She reached for her documents with shaking hands. The manager was already turning away, dismissing her as if she were nothing, as if she did not matter, as if her dignity meant nothing at all. She clutched her old handbag close and turned toward the door. Her vision was blurred with unshed tears. Behind her she could hear whispers and quiet laughter. The walk to the exit seemed impossibly long. Each step felt heavy. Each breath hurt. As she reached for the door handle, ready to leave this place of humiliation and cruelty, she heard it. The sound of the heavy glass door opening from outside. She looked up, her vision still blurred with tears. A tall figure stood silhouetted against the bright morning sunlight. Through her tears, Jihai could not see clearly who was entering. She stepped to the side to let the person pass. But then she heard a voice she knew better than any other in the world. A voice that meant safety and love and home. "Jihai?" Her heart stopped. She blinked away her tears and looked up. Standing before her was her husband, Tae-sung Kim. He was a tall man in his early 50s with kind eyes and strong features. Today he wore one of his business suits. It was dark blue and perfectly fitted, made by a famous Italian tailor. His shoes were polished leather that gleamed under the bank's bright lights. A gold watch worth more than a house peeked from under his shirt cuff. But it was not his expensive clothes that made people stare. It was the air of power and success that surrounded him like an invisible cloud. Behind him stood his personal assistant, a young man named Sung Min carrying a leather briefcase. 2 bodyguards in dark suits flanked them. Everyone in the bank recognized him immediately. His face was on business magazines and news programs. Tae-sung Kim, the CEO of Taesung Corporation, one of the 3 largest technology companies in all of South Korea. Taesung's expression changed the moment he saw his wife's face. He saw her red eyes. He saw her trembling hands. He saw the pain and humiliation written across her features. His gentle expression hardened into something cold and dangerous. "What happened?" he asked quietly, but his voice carried through the silent bank. "Why are you crying?" Ji-hai opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She did not want to make a scene. She did not want trouble. She just wanted to leave and forget this terrible morning. But before she could say anything, a voice cut through the silence. "Mr. Kim?" It was Manager Park. All the blood had drained from his face. He stood frozen behind the counter, his mouth hanging open in shock. His hands gripped the edge of the counter so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Tae-sung did not look at him. His attention remained focused on his wife. He gently placed his hands on her shoulders. "Tell me what happened, my love," he said softly. "Did someone hurt you?" Ji-hai swallowed hard. She glanced at Manager Park, who looked like he might faint at any moment. Part of her wanted to protect him, to say it was nothing, to walk away. That was her nature. She had always been kind, always been forgiving, always been quick to excuse others. But another part of her remembered his cruel laughter. She remembered his mocking words. She remembered how he had made her feel small and worthless in front of all these people. "I came to make a withdrawal," she said quietly. Her voice was shaky but growing stronger. "I wanted to take out some money to donate to an orphanage. The children there need new beds and winter clothes. But the manager—" She paused and looked at Manager Park, who had gone from white to gray. "He laughed at me. He said I was too poor to be in this bank. He said I should go somewhere else, somewhere for people like me." As she spoke, her voice grew steadier. The anger she had pushed down began to surface. "He looked at my clothes and my shoes and decided I was not good enough. He announced my account balance to everyone in the bank. He made fun of me for wanting to help children. He called me. He said I should be receiving charity instead of giving it. Then he told me to leave before he called security." The bank was completely silent now. Every customer, every employee, every person in that building heard her words. Some people looked ashamed. Others looked angry. But all of them looked at Manager Park, who seemed to shrink with each passing second. Tae-sung's jaw tightened. For a moment, he said nothing. He simply looked at his wife with such tenderness and sadness that several people felt tears in their own eyes. Then very slowly, he turned to face Manager Park. The manager took an involuntary step backward. He held up his hands as if to defend himself, though Tae-sung had not moved toward him. "Mr. Kim, I did not know. I did not realize that you did not realize what?" Tae-sung's voice was quiet, but it cut through the air like a knife. "You did not realize she was my wife? So if she had been someone else's wife, someone less wealthy, your behavior would have been acceptable?" Manager Park's mouth opened and closed like a fish. No words came out. His face had gone from gray to green. Sweat appeared on his forehead despite the cool air conditioning. Tae-sung took a step forward, not a threatening step, but one that commanded attention. "Let me understand this clearly," he said. "A customer came to your bank. A customer who has maintained an account here for 15 years. She came to withdraw her own money for a charitable purpose. And you laughed at her. You mocked her. You judged her based on her clothing. You announced her private financial information to a room full of strangers. You refused her service, and you threatened to have her removed by security." With each sentence, Manager Park seemed to shrink further. Other employees had backed away from him, as if he carried a disease. The customers watched with wide eyes, some recording on their phones. I apologize," Manager Park stammered. "I made a terrible mistake. I did not mean... It was not my intention to... Not your intention." Tae-sung's voice rose slightly. "Then what was your intention? Please explain to all of us. Explain to my wife, who is the kindest person I have ever known. Explain to these customers who witnessed your cruelty. What exactly did you intend when you treated her like garbage?" Manager Park had no answer. He looked around desperately as if someone might save him. But everyone avoided his gaze. Even his own employees wanted nothing to do with him now. Min Seo, the teller who had first served Ji-hai, tried to quietly slip away from her counter. But Tae-sung noticed. "You," he said, pointing at her. "Stay where you are." She froze like a statue. Her face turned pale. Tae-sung pulled out his phone. It was the latest model, custom-made, probably worth more than most people earned in a year. He tapped the screen a few times, then held it up. "This is the ownership structure of First National Bank," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Would you like to know who the majority shareholder is?" Manager Park's eyes went to the screen. What little color remained in his face vanished completely. His legs began to shake visibly. Tech Sung Corporation, Tae-sung continued. My company. We own 51% of this bank. Which means, Mr. Park, that you work for me. A collective gasp went through the bank. Several customers pulled out their phones and began searching for information, confirming what Tae-sung had said. Manager Park looked like he might collapse. But that is not the worst of your mistakes, Tae-sung said. He walked to where Ji-hai stood and took her hand gently in his. This woman, whom you deemed unworthy of basic respect, is my wife of 25 years. She is the mother of my children. She is the person I love most in this world. He turned to address the entire bank. My wife chooses to live simply. She could wear designer clothes every day. She could carry handbags that cost as much as a car. She could live in luxury beyond what most people can imagine. But she does not. Do you know why? No one answered. Everyone waited. Because she gives away 90% of her monthly allowance, Tae-sung said. His voice was filled with pride and love. Every month I transfer money to her personal account. And every month she keeps only what she needs for basic expenses. The rest goes to orphanages, women's shelters, homeless programs, and charity organizations. That small balance you laughed at, Mr. Park, was all she had left after helping hundreds of people this month. Ji-hai squeezed her husband's hand. Tears ran down her face again, but these were different tears. Not tears of humiliation, but tears of love and gratitude. She does not do it for recognition, Tae-sung continued. She does not want her name on buildings or plaques. She does not want thank you ceremonies or public acknowledgement. She does it because she has a good heart. Because she remembers what it was like to have nothing. Because she believes that those who have much should help those who have little. He turned back to Manager Park, who now leaned against the counter for support. You judged her by her appearance. You decided she was worthless based on her clothes and shoes. You treated her with contempt and cruelty, and in doing so you revealed exactly what kind of person you are. Please, Manager Park whispered, I will do anything. I will apologize. I will apologize. Tae-sung's laugh was bitter. You want to apologize now? Now that you know who she is? Now that you realize your job is in danger? Where was your apology when she was just a simply dressed woman asking for her own money? Where was your respect when you thought she was powerless? Manager Park had no answer. He sank into a chair, his head in his hands. Tae-sung pulled out his phone again and made a call. Director Choi, he said when someone answered. This is Tae-sung Kim. I need you at the Gangnam branch of First National Bank immediately. We have a serious problem that requires your personal attention. He ended the call and looked at his assistant. Sungmin, I want you to pull up our complete banking portfolio. All accounts under both my name and Ji-hai's name. The assistant opened his briefcase and pulled out a tablet. His fingers moved quickly across the screen. Within seconds, he handed the tablet to Tae-sung. Tae-sung held it up for Manager Park to see. These are our accounts with your bank, he said. The screen showed a list of accounts with balances next to them. The numbers were so large they seemed unreal. Hundreds of millions of won, billions even. More money than most people would see in 10 lifetimes. Manager Park stared at the screen. His face showed complete devastation as he realized the magnitude of his mistake. The tablet screen glowed with numbers that seemed impossible. Account after account appeared on the display, each one holding more money than many people would earn in their entire lives. Manager Park's eyes moved down the list, growing wider with each line. His mouth hung open in disbelief and horror. This account, Tae-sung said, pointing to one near the top, holds our business operating funds. This one is for our children's education trusts. This one is for property investments. This one is our charitable foundation account. His finger moved down the screen. And this tiny account here, the one you laughed at, is my wife's personal spending account. The comparison was devastating. Ji-hai's small personal account looked like pocket change next to the massive balances in the other accounts. But that was exactly the point. She had chosen to keep only what she needed, giving away everything else. Tae-sung handed the tablet back to his assistant. Then he turned his attention back to Manager Park, who looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. Tell me, Mr. Park, Tae-sung said, his voice cold and controlled. If my wife had walked in here wearing a designer dress and expensive jewelry, would you have treated her differently? Manager Park opened his mouth, then closed it. Any answer would condemn him. If he said yes, he admitted to discrimination. If he said no, he was clearly lying. Of course you would have, Taesung answered his own question. You would have smiled and bowed. You would have offered her tea or coffee. You would have processed her transaction quickly and efficiently. You would have thanked her for her business, all because she looked wealthy. He walked closer to the counter where Manager Park still slumped in his chair. But she did not look wealthy. She looked ordinary, simple, perhaps even poor in your eyes. And so you felt free to humiliate her. You felt entitled to judge her. You felt superior to her. The other bank employees stood frozen at their stations. None of them dared to move or speak. They knew that everything happening to Manager Park could just as easily happen to them. Minseo, the teller, had tears running down her face. She too had judged Ji-hai. She too had laughed. I have been successful in business for many years, Taesung continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the silent bank. I have learned many lessons, but one of the most important is this. You can judge the character of a person by how they treat those who can do nothing for them, how they treat those they believe to be beneath them, how they treat those who have no power or status. He gestured around the bank. Every person in this building watched what happened. They saw how you treated my wife. Some of them probably agreed with you. Some thought she did not belong here. Some believed that a premium bank should serve only premium people. Several customers looked away ashamed. They had thought exactly that. They had watched Ji-hai's humiliation without speaking up, without defending her. Their silence had been a kind of agreement. But here is what you failed to understand, Taesung said. Wealth does not make a person valuable. Designer clothes do not make someone worthy of respect. A large bank balance does not determine human worth. My wife, in her simple clothes and old shoes, is worth more than everyone in this bank combined, not because of who I am or what I own, but because of who she is. Ji-hai touched her husband's arm gently. Taesung, she said softly, perhaps we should go now. You have made your point. He looked at her with such love and tenderness that several people in the bank felt their hearts ache. Here was one of the most powerful men in South Korea, someone who could make or break businesses with a word, and he looked at his simply dressed wife like she was the most precious thing in the world. Not yet, my love, he said gently. This is not just about you. It is about every person who has ever been judged by their appearance. Every customer who has been treated badly because they did not look wealthy enough. Every human being who has been made to feel less than they are because of superficial things. He turned back to Manager Park. How many other people have you treated this way? How many customers have you turned away or humiliated because they did not meet your standards of appearance? How many have left this bank feeling small and worthless because of your prejudice? Manager Park's shoulders shook. He might have been crying, but no one could tell for sure. He kept his face buried in his hands. And you, Taesung said, looking at Minseo. You laughed at my wife. You whispered about her. You judged her before she even reached your counter. Do you have anything to say? Minseo's voice was barely a whisper. I am so sorry. I was wrong. I am truly, deeply sorry. Sorry that you did it? Taesung asked. Or sorry that you got caught? She had no answer to that. The truth was probably somewhere in between. Before anyone could speak further, the bank's front door burst open. A man in his 60s rushed in, breathing hard as if he had run all the way. This was Director Choi, the regional director for all First National Bank branches in Seoul. He wore an expensive suit that was now rumpled from his hurry. His face was red with exertion and worry. Mr. Kim, he said, rushing over and bowing deeply. I came as fast as I could. What has happened? How can I help? Taesung's expression did not soften. Director Choi, thank you for coming so quickly. I want to tell you about the service my wife received at this branch today. As Taesung recounted the story, Director Choi's face went through a range of expressions. Shock, disbelief, horror, anger. By the time Taesung finished, the director looked like he might have a heart attack. This is unacceptable, Director Choi said, his voice shaking. Completely unacceptable. Mr. Kim, Mrs. Kim, I cannot express how deeply sorry I am. This is not how our bank operates. This is not our policy or our culture. I'm horrified that this happened. He turned to Manager Park with fury in his eyes. You are suspended immediately, pending a full investigation. Clean out your desk and leave this building within the hour. Security will escort you. Manager Park's head snapped up. Please, he begged. Please, I have a family. I have a mortgage. I cannot lose my job. Please give me another chance. Another chance? Director Choi's voice was sharp. You had your chance. You had every opportunity to treat Mrs. Kim with respect and dignity. Instead, you chose cruelty. You chose judgment. You chose to abuse your position of power. There are consequences for such choices. Manager Park stood up, his legs unsteady. He looked at Ji-hee with desperate eyes. Mrs. Kim, please. I beg you. Tell them to forgive me. You're kind and generous. Everyone says so. Please show mercy. All eyes turned to Ji-hee. This was the moment that would define everything. Tae-sung watched his wife carefully, ready to support whatever decision she made. He knew her heart. He knew she struggled with the idea of anyone suffering, even someone who had hurt her. Ji-hee looked at Manager Park for a long moment. She saw a broken man who had made terrible choices. She saw someone who was sorry, though whether he was sorry for his actions or just for the consequences was unclear. She felt pity for him. That was her nature. But she also thought about all the other people he might have treated this way. All the customers who had left this bank feeling hurt and small. All the people who did not have a powerful husband to defend them. Mr. Park, she said quietly, but her voice was firm. I believe in second chances. I believe people can change and grow. But I also believe in accountability. What you did today was not just rude. It was cruel. You used your power to make someone feel worthless. You enjoyed it. I saw the pleasure on your face when you humiliated me. She paused, gathering her thoughts. I will not ask them to fire you permanently, but I will not ask them to reinstate you either. What happens to you now should be decided by your own actions, by your willingness to truly change, by your commitment to becoming a better person, not by my mercy or my husband's influence. It was a perfect answer. Compassionate but firm, kind but just. Tae-sung felt his love for her grow even stronger if that was possible. Director Choi nodded approvingly. That is very gracious, Mrs. Kim. Manager Park, you heard her. Your employment status will be determined through proper channels, but for now you are suspended. Security will see you out. 2 security guards appeared as if they had been waiting for this moment. They stood on either side of Manager Park. He walked toward the exit with his head down, his shoulders slumped in defeat. As he passed Ji-hee and Tae-sung, he paused. I truly am sorry, he whispered. Then he was gone, escorted out of the building. The bank remained silent for several seconds after he left. Then Director Choi turned to address all the employees. Let this be a lesson to everyone here. We serve all customers with equal respect and dignity, regardless of their appearance, regardless of their account balance, regardless of anything except their humanity. Is that clear? Yes, sir, came a chorus of voices from the employees. Director Choi then turned to the customers who had witnessed everything. To all of you who saw what happened here today, I apologize on behalf of First National Bank. This is not who we are. This is not what we represent. We will do better. Some customers nodded. Others looked ashamed of their own reactions and judgments. A few quietly left the bank, perhaps to think about their own behavior and prejudices. Now, Director Choi said, turning back to Ji-hee with a respectful bow, Mrs. Kim, you came here to make a transaction. Please allow me to personally process it for you. It would be my honor, Ji-hee smiled. It was the first real smile she had shown since entering the bank that morning. Thank you, Director Choi, that is very kind. They walked to a private office away from the stares and whispers. Tae-sung stayed close to his wife, his hand on the small of her back in a protective gesture. His assistant and bodyguards followed at a discreet distance. Director Choi's office was quiet and comfortable, far removed from the chaos of the main banking floor. He offered them seats in expensive leather chairs and immediately ordered tea to be brought in. His hand still trembled slightly as he processed what had happened in his branch. Mrs. Kim, Mr. Kim, he began, settling behind his desk. I cannot apologize enough for what occurred today. In all my years in banking, I have never been so ashamed of an employee's behavior. Ji-hee smiled gently at him. It is not your fault, Director Choi. You were not here. You could not have known. But it is my responsibility, he insisted. Every employee in this bank represents me and represents this institution. If they fail in their duty to treat customers with respect, then I have failed in my duty to train and guide them properly. Tae-sung leaned forward slightly. Director Choi, my wife is too kind to say this, but I will. This was not an isolated incident of one bad employee. Your entire staff watched what happened. They saw my wife being humiliated. Not one person stepped forward to help her. Not one person questioned Manager Park's behavior. Some even laughed along with him. Director Choi's face fell. He knew Taesung was right. You make a valid point, he admitted. The culture of this branch, perhaps of many of our branches, needs to change. We have become too focused on wealthy clients, on premium services, on catering to those who already have plenty. We have forgotten that every customer deserves respect. Exactly, Taesung said. And I want to make sure this changes. Not just in this branch, but in every branch of First National Bank. Director Choi nodded eagerly. Whatever you suggest, Mr. Kim, I am listening. First, Taesung said, counting on his fingers, I want every employee at every branch to undergo mandatory training on customer service and discrimination. They need to understand that judging people by appearance is not only wrong but also bad for business. Consider it done, Director Choi said, making notes on his computer. We will hire the best training consultants available. Second, Taesung continued, I want a system in place where customers can report mistreatment without fear. A direct line to someone who will investigate and take action. Too many people would have simply left today without saying anything because they felt powerless. An excellent idea, Director Choi agreed. I will set up a dedicated department for customer advocacy. They will report directly to me and will have the authority to investigate any complaint thoroughly. Ji-hee had been listening quietly, but now she spoke up. I have a suggestion too, if I may. Both men turned to her immediately, giving her their full attention. What happened to me today was hurtful, she said thoughtfully. But I will recover. I have a loving family and a comfortable life. But what about people who do not have those things? What about the elderly person on a fixed income who gets treated badly at a bank? Or the young person just starting their first job who gets laughed at for their small account balance? They cannot call a CEO husband to defend them. They suffer in silence. Her words hit hard. Everyone in the room knew she was right. I would like to see the bank create a fund, Ji-hye continued. A fund specifically to help customers who have been mistreated based on their financial status or appearance. Not just an apology, but real compensation. Money donated to a charity of their choice in their name. A clear message that their dignity matters. Director Choi stared at her with admiration. Mrs. Kim, that is remarkably generous, especially considering what you have just been through. She shrugged modestly. Pain can either make us bitter or make us better. I choose to use this experience to help others. Taesung reached over and took his wife's hand, squeezing it gently. His eyes shone with pride and love. This was why he had fallen in love with her 25 years ago. Not her appearance, not her family background, not anything superficial, but her beautiful soul, her generous heart, her ability to turn hurt into help. We will fund it, Taesung announced. Taesung Corporation will donate 1 billion won to start this fund. That should be enough to make a real difference. Director Choi nearly fell out of his chair. 1 billion won was roughly $800,000. It was an enormous amount of money for such a specific purpose. Mr. Kim, that is incredibly generous. But are you certain? Absolutely certain, Taesung replied firmly. Consider it an investment in human dignity. And Director Choi, I want quarterly reports on how this fund is being used. I want to see that it is actually helping people and not just sitting in an account somewhere. Of course, Director Choi said, typing frantically on his computer. I will personally oversee the fund's administration. We will create clear guidelines for who qualifies and how they can access it. Good, Taesung said. Now my wife came here today to make a withdrawal. I believe we have delayed that transaction long enough. Director Choi looked startled, as if he had forgotten the original purpose of their visit. Of course. I apologize for the delay. Let me process that immediately. He pulled up Ji-hye's account on his computer. His fingers moved quickly over the keyboard. You wanted to withdraw 5 million won, correct? Yes, please, Ji-hye confirmed. It is for the Rainbow Children's Home. They need new beds and winter clothing for the children. Winter comes early this year, and many of the children do not have warm coats. Director Choi processed the withdrawal without any questions or judgment. Within minutes, he had the money ready in a secure envelope. He handed it to Ji-hye with both hands, bowing respectfully. Thank you, Ji-hye said, accepting the envelope. She tucked it carefully into her old handbag, right next to her worn wallet and faded handkerchief. As they prepared to leave, Director Choi stood and bowed deeply. Mrs. Kim, Mr. Kim, thank you for giving us the opportunity to make this right. I promise you things will change. We will be better, Taesung nodded. I will be watching, Director Choi. I may own 51% of this bank, but my wife is its most important customer. What happened today must never happen again to her or to anyone else. It will not, Director Choi promised. You have my word. They left the office and walked back through the main banking floor. Every eye in the building followed them. Employees stood a little straighter. Customers watched with respect and curiosity. The atmosphere had completely changed from when Ji-hai first entered that morning. As they approached the exit, Tae-sung paused. He turned to face the entire bank. His voice carried clearly through the large space. I want everyone here to remember something. The woman walking beside me could have come in here today wearing diamonds and designer clothes. She could have demanded VIP treatment. She could have used my name to get special service. But she did not. Do you know why? People shook their heads, waiting for his answer. Because she believes that everyone deserves the same respect, Tae-sung said. Rich or poor, powerful or ordinary, everyone is equally human. That is a lesson I learned from her. And it is a lesson I hope all of you learn today. He looked specifically at Min Seo, the teller who had first served Ji-hai. You judged my wife before you knew her. You assumed she was nobody important because of how she dressed. But every person who walks through that door is important. Every customer deserves your respect. Not because of what they own or how they look, but simply because they are human beings. Min Seo nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand, Mr. Kim. I'm so sorry. I will be better. See that you are, Tae-sung said, but his voice was not unkind. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we learn from them and how we change. He turned to Ji-hai and offered her his arm. She took it with a smile. Together they walked toward the exit. His bodyguards opened the door for them and bright sunlight streamed in. Just before they stepped outside, Ji-hai paused and looked back at the bank one more time. She saw the employees watching her, their faces showing a mix of shame, respect, and determination to do better. She saw customers who were rethinking their own prejudices and assumptions. She saw Min Seo wiping her eyes, clearly affected by what had happened. And Ji-hai smiled. Not a triumphant smile or a proud smile, but a gentle, hopeful smile, because she believed that good could come from this painful experience. She believed that people could change. She believed that one moment of standing up for dignity could ripple outward and create positive change. Are you ready to go, my love? Tae-sung asked softly. Yes, she replied. Let us go deliver this money to the children. They are waiting. They stepped out into the sunshine together. The door closed behind them. But the impact of what had happened would remain in that bank for a very long time. In fact, the impact would spread far beyond just that one branch. As Tae-sung and Ji-hai walked to their car, a black luxury sedan that waited at the curb, his assistant Sung-min fell into step beside them. Mr. Kim, he said quietly, several news organizations are already calling about what happened. Apparently, some customers posted about it on social media. It is spreading quickly. Tae-sung paused at the car door. He looked at Ji-hai questioningly. What do you want me to tell them? We can keep your name out of it if you prefer privacy. Ji-hai thought for a moment. Part of her wanted to stay anonymous, to avoid the spotlight and attention. But another part of her thought about all the people out there who had been judged, all the customers who had been mistreated, all the ordinary people who felt invisible to those in power. Tell them the truth, she said finally. Not for my sake, but because maybe it will help someone else. Maybe it will make people think twice before they judge others. Maybe it will encourage businesses to treat all customers better. Tae-sung smiled proudly at his wife. Are you sure? Once it is out there, you will receive a lot of attention. Probably some criticism too. I am sure, Ji-hai said firmly. If my embarrassment can help others avoid the same pain, then it is worth it. Sung-min nodded and stepped away to make some calls. Tae-sung helped Ji-hee into the car, then slid in beside her. The bodyguards took their positions in a following vehicle. As the car pulled away from the bank, Ji-hai looked out the window at the city passing by. She felt tired but also strangely peaceful. The morning had been difficult, perhaps one of the most humiliating experiences of her life, but it had also shown her something important about herself. She had stood up for her dignity. She had not let cruelty break her spirit. And maybe, just maybe, some good would come from it. What are you thinking about? Tae-sung asked, watching her face carefully. I am thinking about how strange life is, she replied. This morning I woke up planning to have a simple day. Go to the bank, deliver money to the orphanage, maybe buy some vegetables at the market. Now the whole world is going to know what happened to me. Does that bother you? He asked gently. She shook her head. Not as much as I thought it would. If it had just been about me, I might have stayed quiet. But it is not just about me. How many other people has Manager Park treated that way? How many customers at other banks, other businesses, other places face this kind of judgment every day? Too many, Taesung agreed. Far too many. Then maybe this needed to happen, Ji-hai said. Maybe I needed to go through that humiliation, so that others would not have to. Maybe this is how change begins. Taesung took her hand and brought it to his lips, kissing it softly. You are the strongest person I know, he said. And the kindest. Most people in your situation would want revenge. They would want to see Manager Park destroyed. But you showed him mercy. I showed him accountability, Ji-hai corrected. There is a difference. Mercy without accountability is just enabling bad behavior. But punishment without the possibility of redemption is just cruelty. I want him to have the chance to become better. But I also want him to face the consequences of his choices. The car drove through the streets of Seoul, past tall buildings and busy shops. Finally, they arrived at Rainbow Children's Home. It was a simple building in a quiet neighborhood, not fancy or impressive from the outside, but inside lived 30 children who had no parents, no family, no one to care for them except the dedicated staff who ran the orphanage. As Ji-hai stepped out of the luxury car in her simple clothes and old shoes, the director of the orphanage came rushing out to greet her. This was Miss Park, a woman in her 60s with gray hair and kind eyes. She had run the orphanage for 20 years, pouring her life into caring for children no one else wanted. Mrs. Kim, Miss Park called out, her face bright with happiness. And Mr. Kim, what a wonderful surprise. We were not expecting you both. Ji-hai embraced the older woman warmly. I brought the donation we discussed, she said, pulling the envelope from her handbag. For the new beds and winter clothes. Ms. Park accepted the envelope with trembling hands. Tears filled her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. You have no idea what this means to us. The children have been sleeping 3 to a bed because we do not have enough. And winter is coming so fast this year. This money will change their lives. May we see the children? Taesung asked. I would like to meet them if that is all right. Of course. They will be so excited. Ms. Park led them inside the building. The orphanage was clean but clearly old. The paint was faded in places. The furniture was worn. But everything was neat and organized, showing that people here cared deeply, even if they had little money. Children's artwork covered the walls. Small handprints in paint, drawings of flowers and animals, and messages of hope decorated every available space. They entered a large room where the children were having their afternoon snack. 30 faces turned toward them, ranging in age from 4 years old to 16. When the children saw Ji-hai, many of them shouted with joy and ran to hug her. Auntie Ji-hai, they called out. She was not their real aunt, of course, but she had visited so many times, brought so many gifts, and shown them so much love that they thought of her that way. Ji-hai knelt down to hug the smaller children, laughing as they climbed on her like puppies. Hello, my darling, she said warmly. I have missed you all so much. Have you been good? Yes. They chorused, though some looked guilty, suggesting they had not been quite as good as they claimed. Taesung watched his wife with the children, his heart full. This was her true wealth. Not money or status, but love given and received. These children adored her because she treated them like they mattered, like they were valuable, like they deserved respect and affection. Who is that man? A small girl asked, pointing at Taesung with wide eyes. Is he a prince? The children laughed. Taesung smiled and knelt down to the girl's level. No, not a prince. Just a very lucky man who is married to Auntie Ji-hai. Are you rich? Another child asked bluntly. Children had no filter, no social niceties. They asked what they wanted to know. Yes, I am, Taesung answered honestly. I have been very fortunate in my business. Then why does Auntie Ji-hai wear old clothes? The child asked, genuinely confused. If you are rich, she should wear pretty dresses like princesses in movies. Taesung looked at Ji-hai, who smiled at him. He turned back to the child. That is a very good question. Would you like to know the answer? All 30 children leaned in, listening carefully. Even the teenagers, who usually pretended not to care about adult conversations, were paying attention. Auntie Ji-hai could wear expensive dresses every day if she wanted, Taesung explained. She could buy designer handbags and fancy shoes and jewelry. But she chooses not to. Do you know why? The children shook their heads. Because she would rather use that money to help you, he said simply. She would rather buy you new beds so you can sleep comfortably. She would rather buy you warm coats for winter so you do not get cold. She would rather make sure you have good food and books and toys. To her, your happiness is more valuable than any dress or handbag. The children were silent, processing this information. Then the small girl who had first asked the question climbed into Jihai's lap and hugged her tightly. I love you, Auntie Jihai, she whispered. You are better than any princess. Jihai's eyes filled with tears. She held the child close. I love you too, sweetheart. All of you. You are all so precious to me. An older boy, perhaps 15 years old, spoke up from the back of the room. Mrs. Kim, is it true what they are saying online? That someone at a bank treated you badly today because of your clothes? Jihai looked surprised. How did you know about that? It is all over social media, the boy said, holding up his phone. People are talking about it everywhere. They are saying you are the wife of a billionaire, but you dress simply, and a bank manager laughed at you and kicked you out. Ms. Park looked alarmed. Is this true? Someone treated you badly? Jihai sighed. She had hoped to keep the children from knowing about it, but apparently the news was spreading faster than she had anticipated. Yes, it is true. Something unpleasant happened at the bank this morning, but it is all sorted out now. What did the bank manager do? The older boy pressed. He had a protective look in his eyes as if he wanted to defend Jihai himself. He judged me based on my appearance, Jihai said honestly. She believed in being truthful with children. He saw my old clothes and worn shoes and decided I was not important enough to serve. He was rude and unkind. That is not fair, a young girl exclaimed. You are the kindest person in the world. Thank you, sweetheart, Jihai said. But the point is not whether I am kind or not. The point is that everyone deserves respect, regardless of how they look or how much money they have. The bank manager was wrong to judge me, just like it would be wrong to judge any of you based on the fact that you are orphans or that you do not have fancy clothes. The children nodded seriously. Many of them had experienced judgment and prejudice in their young lives. They knew what it felt like to be looked down upon, to be treated as less than others. What happened to the bank manager? The older boy asked. Did he get in trouble? Yes, Taesung answered. He was suspended from his job, and the bank is going to make changes to make sure this does not happen to other people. Good, the boy said with satisfaction. People should not be mean to others just because they look different or have less money. Exactly right, Taesung agreed. That is an important lesson. Judge people by their actions, by their character, by how they treat others, not by their appearance or their possessions. Ms. Park served tea and snacks, and they spent the next hour with the children. Jihai helped the younger ones with their homework. Taesung played board games with the older children. For a brief time, the events of the morning faded away, replaced by laughter and simple joy. But eventually, Taesung's phone began buzzing insistently. He stepped out of the room to take several calls. When he returned, his expression was serious. We need to talk, he said quietly to Jihai. They excused themselves and stepped into Ms. Park's small office. What is it? Jihai asked, concerned by her husband's expression. The story has gone viral, Taesung explained. Several customers at the bank posted about what happened on social media. Others have shared their own stories of being mistreated at banks and other businesses. There are now hundreds of thousands of comments and shares. News organizations want interviews. The chairman of First National Bank has called me personally to apologize. Jihai sat down, suddenly feeling overwhelmed. I did not expect it to spread so quickly. Neither did I, Taesung admitted. But it has touched a nerve. Many people have experienced something similar. They feel seen and validated by your story. But there is more. What else? Jihai asked. Several other large companies have contacted me, Taesung said. They want to partner with us to create similar programs in their businesses. Training on customer respect, funds for mistreated customers, policies against discrimination. Your experience this morning is sparking a movement. Jihai was quiet for a moment, absorbing this information. Then a small smile appeared on her face. A movement, she repeated. From one terrible morning at a bank. It could change how businesses treat people, Taesung said. At least it could start the conversation. Make people more aware. Hold companies accountable. Then I am glad I went to that bank today, Jihai said firmly. Even though it hurt. Even though it was humiliating, if it leads to positive change, then it was worth it. Taesung pulled her into his arms. You are remarkable, he murmured into her hair. Do you know that? Absolutely remarkable. They stood there for a moment holding each other. Outside the office, they could hear the children playing and laughing. It was a good sound, a healing sound. 3 months passed after the incident at First National Bank. Those 3 months brought changes that no one could have predicted. When Ji-hai first walked into that bank on that difficult morning, the story had spread across South Korea and then internationally. News organizations from around the world covered it. Some focused on the drama of a billionaire's wife being mistreated. Others focused on the deeper issue of how businesses judge and treat customers based on appearance. Social media exploded with people sharing their own stories of discrimination and mistreatment. First National Bank moved quickly to implement changes. Every employee, from tellers to managers to executives, underwent mandatory training. The training was not just about customer service, but about unconscious bias, dignity, and respect. Real stories from real customers who had been mistreated were shared, including Ji-hai's story. Many employees cried during the training, finally understanding the impact of their actions and judgments. The fund that Ji-hai had suggested, now called the Dignity Fund, received its initial 1 billion won from Taesung Corporation. But donations poured in from other sources too. Companies wanted to be associated with the positive message. Individual people sent small donations because they believed in the cause. Within 3 months, the fund had grown to over 3 billion won. The fund helped dozens of people in its first months. An elderly man who had been turned away from a hotel because his clothes were shabby received an apology and a donation to his favorite charity. A young woman who had been laughed at while trying to open a savings account received compensation and a personal apology from the bank's CEO. A homeless person who had been thrown out of a restaurant while trying to buy food with coins received money donated to a shelter in his name. Each story was documented and shared with permission, creating a ripple effect of awareness and change. Other banks and businesses started their own training programs and complaint systems. The movement that Taesung had mentioned was real and growing. Manager Park, the man who had started it all with his cruel behavior, had a more complicated journey. He was officially fired from First National Bank after the investigation confirmed multiple instances of similar behavior with other customers. Several people came forward with their own stories of being judged and mistreated by him. For weeks after losing his job, Park spiraled into depression and anger. He blamed everyone but himself. He blamed Ji-hai for being too sensitive. He blamed Taesung for overreacting. He blamed social media for making too big a deal of it. He blamed the bank for not supporting him. He applied for other banking jobs but found that his reputation preceded him. No one wanted to hire the man who had become infamous for mistreating customers. His wife struggled to understand what had happened. Their children heard about it at school, where other kids teased them about their father being the mean bank manager. The mortgage payments became difficult. Money got tight. Park experienced firsthand what it felt like to be judged and looked down upon by others. But slowly something began to change in him. The anger began to fade, replaced by genuine reflection. He started to see his actions from a different perspective. He remembered not just Ji-hai, but all the other people he had treated badly over the years. The poor elderly woman he had made wait for hours. The young couple trying to get a loan for their first home whom he had mocked. The immigrant worker whose accent he had mimicked cruelly. The list went on and he was ashamed. One cold November afternoon, Park stood outside Rainbow Children's Home. He had learned that this was where Ji-hai had been planning to donate the money she had tried to withdraw that day. He had been standing there for an hour, trying to gather the courage to go inside. Finally, he walked up to the door and knocked. Ms. Park, the director, opened it. She recognized him immediately. His face had been all over the news. Her expression hardened. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice cold. "I came to apologize," Park said quietly, "and to donate." He held out an envelope. "It is not much. Only 500,000 won. But it is all I can spare right now. I want it to go to the children. To help make up for the money Mrs. Kim was not able to get that day because of me." Ms. Park stared at him suspiciously. "Why should I believe you? Is this some publicity stunt? Some attempt to rebuild your image?" "No," Park said, and his voice broke slightly. "No one knows I am here. I have not told anyone. I do not want recognition or forgiveness or anything else. I just want to try to make things a tiny bit better. I know I cannot undo what I did. But maybe I can do something good now. Ms. Park studied his face for a long moment. She had worked with people for many years and had learned to read sincerity. What she saw in Park's eyes was genuine remorse and shame. "Come in," she said finally, stepping aside. Park entered the orphanage and saw the children playing. They had new beds now, bought with Ji-Hai's donation and additional funds from the Dignity Fund. They wore warm winter coats. They looked happy and cared for. "This is what Mrs. Kim does with her money," Ms. Park said. "While you were judging her for her simple clothes, she was helping children like these. Every month she donates. Every month she visits. Every month she shows these kids that they matter, that they are valuable, that someone cares about them." Park's eyes filled with tears. "I was so wrong," he whispered. "About everything. I thought money and appearance were what mattered. I thought wealthy people were somehow better than others. I judged everyone by their clothes and their account balances. And I was completely, absolutely wrong." "Yes, you were," Ms. Park agreed bluntly. "But the question is, what are you going to do about it now?" "I do not know," Park admitted. "I lost my job. My reputation is destroyed. No bank will hire me. I do not know how to move forward." Ms. Park thought for a moment. "We need volunteers here," she said slowly. "People to help with homework, to play with the children, to do maintenance work. It does not pay anything, but if you are serious about changing, about becoming a better person, maybe this is where you should start." Park looked at her with surprise. "You would let me volunteer here? After what I did?" "Not for you," Ms. Park said firmly. "For the children. They need help, and maybe you need to learn what real value looks like. It is not in bank accounts or designer clothes. It is in the smile of a child who finally has a warm bed. It is in the hug of a kid who has never had a family. It is in knowing that you made someone's life a little bit better." "I would like that," Park said, his voice thick with emotion. "I would like to help, to learn, to try to become the kind of person who deserves respect instead of someone who demands it based on a title." And so he did. Over the following months, Park volunteered at the orphanage twice a week. He helped with homework, fixed broken furniture, played games with the children, and slowly, gradually learned what it meant to serve instead of judge. Meanwhile, Ji-Hai continued her quiet life. Despite the attention and fame that came from the viral story, she refused to change her ways. She still wore simple clothes. She still carried her old handbag. She still donated most of her money to charity. The only difference was that now, when she went to the bank, every employee treated her with respect. Not because they knew who she was, but because the entire culture had changed. One day in early December, Ji-Hai returned to Rainbow Children's Home for her regular visit. She was surprised to see a familiar face helping the children with their art projects. It was Manager Park, his sleeves rolled up, paint on his hands, laughing as a small child decorated his arm with colorful handprints. He saw her and froze. The color drained from his face. He stood up quickly, accidentally knocking over a cup of paintbrushes. "Mrs. Kim," he said, his voice shaking, "I did not know you would be here today." Ji-Hee looked at him calmly. "I come every week," she said. "Ms. Park, what is this man doing here?" Ms. Park appeared from the kitchen. "He has been volunteering for the past 6 weeks. He asked if he could help." I said yes. Ji-Hee turned her attention back to Park. "Why?" she asked simply. Park took a deep breath. "Because I need to learn. Because I was wrong about everything. Because these children are teaching me what real value means." He gestured around the room. "They do not care about my job title or my bank account. They care about whether I am kind, whether I listen to them, whether I show up when I say I will. They are teaching me to be a better person." Ji-Hai was quiet for a long moment. The children had gathered around, sensing something important was happening, but not fully understanding what. "You hurt me," Ji-Hai said finally. "You humiliated me in front of many people. You judged me without knowing anything about me. You used your power to make someone feel worthless." "I know," Park said, his voice breaking. "I am so sorry. I know my apology is not enough. I know I cannot undo what I did. But I am trying to change. I am trying to become someone who deserves forgiveness even if I never receive it." Ji-Hai looked at the children, who were watching with wide eyes. Then she looked at Ms. Park, who gave a small nod of encouragement. Finally, she looked back at Park. "My husband wanted to destroy you," she said quietly. He wanted to make sure you never worked in banking again. He wanted to use his influence to ensure you faced the full consequences of your actions. Do you know why he did not? Park shook his head. Because I asked him not to, Ji-hai said. I believe in consequences, yes. You needed to lose your job. You needed to face what you did. But I also believe in the possibility of change. I believe that people can become better if they choose to. The question is, have you chosen to? Yes, Park said with absolute certainty. I have. I am not doing this to get my job back or to repair my reputation. I am doing this because I finally understand what I did wrong and I want to be different. Ji-hai studied him for another moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, she smiled. Then I forgive you, she said. Not because you have earned it, but because holding on to anger hurts me more than it hurts you, and because these children should not be exposed to bitterness and resentment. Park's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, he whispered. You are far kinder than I deserve. Probably, Ji-hai agreed with a small laugh. But kindness is not about what people deserve. It is about who we choose to be. She turned to the children, who had been listening to this adult conversation with varying degrees of understanding. Now, she said brightly, who wants to help me make cookies? The children cheered and rushed to the kitchen. The tension broke, replaced by the chaos and joy of 30 children eager for treats. Park watched Ji-hai lead the children away, still stunned by her forgiveness. Ms. Park put a hand on his shoulder. That is the woman you judged as worthless, she said softly. Learn from her. Become more like her. That is how you make this right. Park nodded, unable to speak. In the months and years that followed, the changes that started with one bad morning at a bank continued to spread. First National Bank became known for its exceptional customer service and its commitment to treating everyone with dignity. Other banks and businesses followed their example. The Dignity Fund helped hundreds of people who had experienced discrimination and mistreatment. Manager Park eventually found work again, though not in banking. He became a counselor, helping other people recognize and overcome their prejudices and biases. He often shared his own story as a cautionary tale. He never forgot the lesson he learned from a simply dressed woman who turned out to be richer in character than he could ever hope to be. Ji-hai continued her quiet life of service and generosity. She never sought fame or recognition. She simply kept doing what she had always done, helping others, donating her wealth, and treating everyone with the respect and kindness she believed all humans deserved. And Tae-sung continued to love and admire his wife, knowing that her true wealth was not in any bank account but in her beautiful soul. The story became a legend in South Korea and beyond. It was told in business schools as an example of why companies should value character over appearance. It was shared in ethics classes as a discussion of prejudice and judgment. It was repeated by parents to children as a lesson about treating others with respect. But for Ji-hai, it was simply one day in her life. A difficult day, yes. A painful day, but also a day that proved something important. That dignity cannot be taken away by someone else's judgment. That true wealth is measured not in money, but in how we treat others. And that one person's choice to stand up for respect can create ripples of change that spread far beyond what anyone could imagine. The incident at the bank taught many lessons, but perhaps the most important was this. Never judge a person by their appearance, because you never know who they are, what they have experienced, or what they might teach you about what truly matters in life.